Before we get going, we're going to start in a couple of minutes. I know the parents in the back are going to get mad at me, but I got to ask for everybody to try and squeeze in the best they can per the fire code. I see some empty seats up in the front. If we can get most of the people to sit down, that would be helpful. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, March 28th, Cranston City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Councilwoman Marino, Councilwoman Renzulli, Councilwoman Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Present.
Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Riley,
Present.
Council Vice President Ferry, Council President Paplaskas.
Present. Good evening, everyone. Before we get going, I'd just like to acknowledge a Cranston City Council alumnus who's here this evening, former Ward 3 Councilman Ronald Paglarini. Sir, Councilman, welcome back to Chambers. Nice to see you. Come on, we can use you. All right. I'd also like the record reflect that Council Member Marino is present. I'd like to ask for you all to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. At this point, I'll ask for a motion to dispense and to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? I see none. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes. Thank you. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge that Councilmember Renzulli is present, and we will be moving on to public acknowledgements and commendations. Hey, good evening, everyone. We have many citations to hand out. Before we get to the teams, I just want to say, we're going to announce your name. Come on up. Be careful of the wires for the microphones and the plants that need water. We're going to do that after the meeting. It's our tradition. But just be careful when you do come up here. When we do call your team up, we'll take one team at a time shortly. But first up, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of directors that are leaving us that honestly, I think all of us on the city council are very sad to hear. Will be very difficult to replace and do a ton of work for the city of Cranston and have for years. So first up, I would like to acknowledge Director Kenneth Mason, our Director of Public Works, and I'll read this citation to him. On the occasion of his retirement from the city of Cranston, serving as Director of Public Works from September 17th, 2012 till April 22nd, 2022, the entire council extends its sincerest congratulations and very best wishes on this memorable occasion in appreciation for his years of distinguished tireless work and dedication to the city of Cranston and express their hope for his continued success, good health, and good fortune. Just like to say congratulations to Director Strom and to all of the people in the gallery here. Your trash gets picked up, you never have to think about it. Your snow gets removed and many other things. It's all because of Director Mason. So let's give Director Mason a round of applause. And just to follow up, I heard the men and women of Public Works Department gave you a golden trash can for your retirement. Is that true? Well, thank you very much, sir. We also have somebody else to acknowledge who we like to refer to as the golden checkbook, who is our finance director for the city of Cranston, who's done a tremendous job for us and will also be sorely missed. And I'll read Director Strom's citation. On this occasion of his retirement from the city of Cranston, serving as internal auditor from July 1st, 1999 through June 9th, 2000, and as finance director from January 28th, 2009 through March 31st, 2022. The entire council extends its sincerest congratulations and very best wishes on this memorable occasion and appreciation for your years of distinguished and tireless work. So Director Strom, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Mayor Alan Fung, who I worked for 12 years, and also the current administration, Mayor Ken Hopkins. I want to thank all the council members present and in the past that I've worked with over the last 12 years. And I want to thank my staff, who's been very helpful to me to accomplish some of the things I think we got done in Cranston. And I think Cranston financially is in a better position today than it was when I came in 2009. So thank you all.
Again, congratulations. And we're going to miss the both of you, seriously. So thank you for everything. All right, moving on to the teams. Remember, watch your step when you come up. We'll call you up one by one, hand you your citation, and then please just stay up here so we can get a nice photo when you're done, okay? I'm gonna ask Council Member Campo Piano to come up and give me a hand. So first up, we have the CLCF junior basketball team in proud recognition of finishing the season 12-1 and being in the #1 seed throughout the playoffs and winning the state championship. The entire council extends congratulations and very best wishes on this memorable occasion. So we're going to call you up one at a time. First up, we have Jaden Baradas. Congratulations. Next, Jonathan Paglarini. Shay Hughes. Dylan Milano. Eddie Wenzel. Luke Zorian. Braden McMahon. Adrian Mendez. Juan Fernandez. Yeah. Tim Doe. Yeah. Coach Ed Wenzel. And Coach Paul Baradas. Ladies and gentlemen, your state champs. I'm going to put Coach Baradas on the spot and ask him to say a few words.
Thank you for having us, President Council. What can I say about these great kids? I took them on, kind of forced to coach CLCF. They're like, hey, we need a coach. All right, I'll do it. Drafting kids, we had to draft kids. Some kids never played basketball before in their life, first season playing, and they developed as a team and showed their resilience, worked together, never gave up on each other, and did whatever they could do. Lost one game by 4 points. We should have won that game and been undefeated. But we all pulled together, finished the season strong, and ran away with the playoffs. And it was great to have a huge trophy at the end of the tournament, right, guys? I'm proud to be your coach. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for letting Coach Ed and I coach you guys. So I'm super proud of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, players. The next team we are honoring is the St. Mary's Girl Instructional Basketball Team in proud recognition of an undefeated season going 10-0. And of all these first-year players, and they had a very successful season going undefeated. So let's give a round of applause for that undefeated season. All right. We're going to call your name and then come on up one by one for your citation. First up, Liala Bianchi. And I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. Alan DiConstanzo. Alana DiConstanzo. Hiya. Annabelle Drown. Yep. Peyton Dubois. Alicia Gambardelli. Addison Holler. Violet Hughes. And Angela Jang. Audrina Mattancini. Sophia Paglarini. Coach Lisa Lepore. Coach Donna Peluso. Melania Peluso. And Skylar Roberts. Coach, would you like to say a few words?
I just want to say what a wonderful season we've had. These girls had never picked up a basketball before to play as a team, and to come out and play the way they did and go undefeated the entire season. I'm very proud of them.
Great job.
Thank you. The next team that we are honoring is the St. Mary's Girls Grammar Team, who finished the year as a semifinalist and made a big push at the end of the season to get in the playoffs. The entire city council extends its congratulations and very, very best wishes on this memorable occasion and express their hope for their continued success. And we look forward to what your team will accomplish next year. So first up on the girls' grammar team, we have Lily Sherman. Carolyn Abreu. Rachel Beely. Alana Hernandez. Olivia May. Carla Vargas. Ava Vendatuli. Sanai Robinson. And Sophia Peplowskis. Coach Thomas May. Yeah. And assistant coach Alberto Abreu.
On. And at this point, very proud, look forward to what they're going to be able to do in the future.
Thank you. All right, one more team to go. Last but certainly not least, this team all year long, we heard about family. Family was their theme. Every time they came in as a team, they were announced as a family. They had a tough championship game, came back with seconds to go with a three-pointer to tie the game, and then they came back to win the state championships in overtime. Everybody at St. Mary's and the city of Cranston couldn't be prouder of this team. They fought, they never gave up, and they came out on top. So let's give a round of applause for the D2 state champs. All right, first up, Jaden Baradas. Shay Hughes. William Ellis. Jonathan Paglarini. Sergio Parada. Angel Santiago Rico. Kristen Ivy Jones. I can't mess this name up. Aiden Peplowskis. This next person will one day be mayor of Cranston, just so you know. His house is right across the street, and he shakes everybody's hand before the start of school. Ryan Chase. Marcelo Parada. And Mr. Three-Pointer, Nathan Conca. Like to acknowledge Coach Renee. And Coach Baradas. Coach, say some words.
Right? I can't say enough about this team. Every time I think about it, I get choked up. What this team has gone through this year, guys, I love you all. You know, President Council said something about family. We didn't become a family until I'd say about 4 months ago. You know, we just kept striving to be the best team. Then all of a sudden it clicked. We became a family. And you guys played your butts off for me, for Coach Renee, and for each other, nevertheless. You know, we should have been undefeated. But I'll take the blame on that one loss, Nate. I got you, don't worry. But when we talk a hell of a game, and for those who are friends with me on Facebook, you've seen plenty of videos. These kids came back, you know, down with 6 minutes, 1:30 left. You would never think that. Game tying 3 by Nate, you know, put us in overtime, 2 seconds left. Angel comes up with a great unselfish pass from Marcelo for a quick 2-second layup with 2 seconds left. And we won 35-34 to be a state champion and hang a banner up in St. Mary's gym. Guys, this is a hell of a way to end your 8th grade. You know, we battled a lot as kids going through COVID, you know, and losing a whole season. I couldn't be prouder of you guys. So from deep down in my heart, I love you guys. So.
Coach, could I ask one more thing before you go? Could I get you to bring it in one more time like you did every game?
Get a picture and then bring it in.
You'll get a picture and then I'll have you bring it in. Thank you, state champions, St. Mary's Tigers. At this time, I'll call for a 5-minute recess to allow the players and parents to go home and have a late dinner. I'm sure you don't want to sit through the rest of the evening. You can. I'm not asking you to leave, but we'll call for a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, council members, if we can take our seats, we'll. Director Lima, would you mind closing that back door for me, please? Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll hereby return us from recess. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a lot of fun having the teams come in. Not the saying goodbye to the director's part, but having the teams come in was a lot of fun. Moving on to item 2, public hearings and public comment. This is open to docketed matters only. We have another section in the docket for undocketed items. So this is for matters before us that are on the docket, a time limit of 4 minutes. If there's anybody here to speak on a docketed item, please come to the podium now. I see none. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to be heard under public hearings and public comment on docketed items? Please raise your hand.
I see no public comment.
Okay, at this point, I will close public comment on docketed items. Moving on to resolutions, I see none. Moving on to report of committees, Finance Committee, I'll be calling on Vice Chairwoman Renzulli to give the report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight before us, we have a resolution authorizing the motor vehicle tax abatements. This passed in committee and I urge passage here tonight.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion on the motor vehicle tax abatements.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have the tax interest waiver approvals. This passed in committee and I urge passage here tonight.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on the tax interest waiver approvals.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes, Zoe.
Yes. Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
And finally, we have ordinance 2-22-01, an ordinance ratifying the school committee's collective bargaining agreement with Rhode Island Laborers District Council 1322 tradespeople/mechanic unit. This was introduced pursuant to Charter Section 11.02.1, and it passed in committee, and I urge passage here tonight.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion on 2-22-01.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I see none. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes. That concludes the business of the Finance Committee. Thank you, Councilwoman Renzulli. Moving on to the Ordinance Committee, Councilman Chair of Ordinance Committee, Matthew Riley, for introduction.
Thank you, Council President. We have before us ordinance 3-22-01S. This is the ordinance and amendment of Title II of the Code of the City of Cranston entitled Ward Boundaries. This would be enacting the City of Cranston's 2022 Ward Redistricting Plan, sponsored by Council President Pavlovskis. This passed unanimously in committee, and I urge passage tonight.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll entertain a motion on 3-22-01S.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second under discussion. I see none. Oh, Councilmember Donegan.
Thank you, President. I I don't come to this decision lightly, and I'll keep my comments for this and the resolution, so I'm not going to repeat myself. We've sat here through several meetings, and I've talked about the issue of prison-based gerrymandering. And while the boundaries themselves of the maps, I don't have any particular issue with. In fact, I think that they're quite well done in keeping neighborhoods intact, particularly neighborhoods that were once part of Ward 3 that are now part of Ward 2, or once part of Ward 2 that are now part of Ward 3. So, in my personal, the ward that I am currently elected to represent, I think it does a very good job at keeping neighborhoods intact. So my issues aren't necessarily with the ward. My issue is with the continuance and the perpetuate issue of prison-based gerrymandering and including non-resident incarcerated persons in the redistricting data. It continues to skew the populations for the wards by effectively inflating the resident total of Ward 6, which gives Ward 6 an disproportionate amount of political power at the city level. Based on the current maps, essentially there will be about 11,000 actual residents of Ward 6, not including non-incarcerated persons. It's about 14,000 residents in Ward 3, which is where I represent. So effectively, 14,000 residents in Ward 3 will have the same political representation of 11,000 residents in Ward 6, and I don't think that's right. The resolution that is not before us officially on this motion, but will be momentarily, it says, and it points out that Cranston residents are entitled to equal representation. And by including non-incarcerated persons, by including non-resident incarcerated persons in our redistricting totals, it undermines that democratic principle. And I think it's wrong. And I think that continuing with that practice undermines the principle, again, of equal representation, and it's wrong. And voting in favor of these maps perpetuates that injustice that's done to residents in Cranston outside of Ward 6. And so for that reason, I'll be voting against this tonight, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same.
Thank you, Councilmember Donegan. Any other discussion? I see none. I'll just follow up by saying that the charter says that we have to obviously people are counted where they're counted for the census, and the charter has to follow the census. So that's the maps that are before us today. I'll just want to thank Director Lima, GIS, Ria Druso, and the entire board of canvassers for all their hard work on everything that they've done. So thank you for everything. Phenomenal job over a year and a half process, and certainly thank you for all your work. Any other comment by council members? Nope. Council member, I will come back to you. Councilmember Vargas had her hand up first.
Thank you, Council President. I'm not sure if, just kind of to point out, as Councilmember Donegan is speaking, with the ward redistricting, are we following the state, I guess, what the state is doing, or perhaps recommending? I'm not sure if Director Lima would be able to, I know we're not, I want to go back and forth, but I don't know if he's able to answer that.
Through the chair to Director Lima, if you would like to give us.
Good evening, Council President, members of the council. So the State Reapportionment Commission established a new process this year in which they decided to not count a portion of the incarcerated population at the Pastori Center that was limited to just, I believe, those incarcerated for sentences or awaiting sentence of less than 2 years at the time of the census, which is April 1st, 2020. So for that narrow segment of the prison population at the ACI, the incarcerated population, the State Reapportionment Commission decided to reallocate that population to what they defined as geocodable Rhode Island addresses elsewhere in the state. So in simpler terms, if they had a record of where the individual lived prior to being incarcerated, they made a best attempt effort to put that individual in the census block geography where they could be counted for purposes of redistricting. That could not be done for all records that the ACI had, because the issue here was they were doing it essentially after the fact. The ACI, when it took these prisoners in on or before April 1st, 2020, did not do so with the intent of using that data to provide to the state for the future. So the data wasn't exactly great data from my understanding that the state used. However, what they were able to use, what they were able to geocode, and I don't know the exact number, we've actually asked the state for the numbers, and as of today, they still haven't responded to us. But the numbers that they did reallocate were roughly 1,000 people from the prisoner population. And that was used to change the statewide totals for the congressional apportionment, as well as the state representative and state senate apportionment. As part of its motion, the State Redistricting Commission was authorized by the General Assembly for narrow focus. So they didn't have the ability, for example, to change state law. They could only make recommendations to the General Assembly. So as part of that motion, the State Commission said something to the effect of, this motion will apply to just the actions of the state legislature for state and congressional redistricting, thereby leaving the decision of local redistricting of wards up to the individual town. So in essence, the intent of the state's action was to only affect the state process, and for it to not have a reverberating effect to cities and towns unless the cities and towns themselves decided to do otherwise. Now, of course, here in Cranston, as was mentioned, we have a home rule charter that outlines redistricting process. That's not really subject to alteration except for by action of the voters. That varies from town to town, city to city, amongst the 39 municipalities. Some cities and towns actually don't even bring redistricting to a council. It's brought to a board of canvassers or an independent commission. But the process here is what it is, and it's not really affected or impacted by what was done at the state level. But you know, the short answer version to your question, Councilwoman, is yes, the state did employ a different means to do so on a limited basis. That I believe under the state's rule set that they kind of came up with on the fly, there were around 1,400 or so individuals that were incarcerated at the ACI that are still counted by the state in Cranston, and thereabouts 1,000 that are not.
Council President, if I may follow up the question. Thank you. Okay, so again, it's just as I'm reading the information, and I have read the information based on the ordinance committee, and I'm just educating myself from that ordinance committee until this day, and I'm asking questions, and so that I can be prepared to actually vote on it this evening as well, or more informed, I should say, than what I was at the ordinance committee. So does that mean that we're leaving it up to the town to decide as to how it should be done, or the state, I guess, is leaving it up to the cities or towns to decide? Is it fair to say then that we as a city decided not to follow the state guideline because the charter says otherwise, that we're not able to do it?
That would be correct. And to expand upon it a little bit, so there's several different ways that could be altered and changed. It was discussed a little bit last February, March, when the council discussed this. A charter change would be the mechanism for the city to change this in the future. That would be something that would either come out of a charter review commission, which the charter review commission did discuss, but did not come out of the commission in 2020, or out of the city council as a whole to put on the ballot a referenda for voters to actually change the home rule charter and change that language. So that's one mechanism. Another mechanism, and I know that there are several groups nationwide that are focused on this, is to actually lobby the Census Bureau itself to change the way it apportions population data when every 10 years with the decennial census. No charter change would be necessary in Cranston if, for example, the Census Bureau decided outright on its own accord to count incarcerated persons at their last known address prior to incarceration. The Census Bureau has considered that. I know that was considered in advance of the 2020 census, it was considered in advance of the 2010 census, but so far they haven't been persuaded to change that. The other mechanism would be by an act of the state itself. There's been legislation proposed in the General Assembly each of the last several years that would instruct the cities and towns and create a mechanism that would require the ACI to report to the Secretary of State last known addresses for incarcerated persons to be used exclusively in with certain privacy protections in place for the redistricting process. That mechanism isn't currently in place, so any independent action, for example, a charter change in the city of Cranston, would have to have concurrent with it some sort of duplicative action at the state level that would enable the city of Cranston to make the ACI provide that information or enter a memorandum of understanding or agreement to provide that what is essentially confidential information to the city for use in that purpose. That's the process that would take significant policy discussions and months or if not years to actually implement correctly. So there is a framework for that right now.
Thank you so much. The other thing was then that someone right now, a incarcerated person at the ACI grounds right now could vote right now, as of now, in Cranston. So as long as they're having committed a felony, right? Or they're, I guess, in trial or so forth. But other, and receive the services, of course, which they would have to if someone falls and the ambulance gets called or something happens. Obviously, we provide that service because they're in city grounds, in our city. But as far as then the children of those of the prisoners, they can't go to school in Cranston. Is that correct?
Well, as far as I know, I really can't answer that. That's sort of the jurisdiction of the school department, and the state laws control where students can and can't go to school as well. But in terms of actual voting, I can answer that portion. And that under Chapter 1 of Title 17, the definition of a domicile is established. So a domicile is considered someone's residence for voting purposes. So it's restrictive, and this is misconstrued often. It's restrictive to someone who's actually eligible to vote. If you're a registered eligible voter, your residence for voting purposes is defined as A, B, C, D, E, and is not lost solely by incarceration in a correctional facility or attendance at an educational institution, or if you get confined to a nursing home or a hospital, your existing residence continues. However, if you're convicted upon conviction of a felony, you lose the right to vote. So that's a non-applicable statute. So that language doesn't really apply to that individual until such time as that person, for example, is released from their felony conviction, and then they can be reenfranchised, actually, and they often are automatically by our office. But that said, the rules are what they are in those instances. If a law passed tomorrow that, we're to count voters who live on the moon, I'm going to go sign up for astronaut training. But at the end of the day, the law is very clear in Cranston that, we have a charter that's controlling, and in order for the process to continue, which we're required by the charter to complete the process, we're required by state and federal law to complete the process, to not see that process through to fruition in a timely manner, and timely being the next few days, we could be in position where the actual conduct of the election is jeopardized, and the ability, for example, not just voters, but candidates that want to come into office in June and provide declarations of candidacy, we wouldn't be in a position to securely inform those people where they actually live, what boundary they live in, absent passage by the council and approval by the mayor.
And so, Director, do you happen to know how many people vote right now or have voted in the last election that from the incarcerated population at the ACI? I know that usually they can request a ballot, right? Those that are eligible to vote. Do we happen to know how many voted?
So from the Pastori complex as a whole, not incarcerated felons, because a felon can't
Not the
vote.
felon,
right.
correct, the
And
actual,
the
like, waiting
vast
trial
majority would
and ta-
be,
Yeah,
right, would be incarcerated. If someone is awaiting trial, for example, and they did want to vote, the turnout would probably be pretty low because at that point, people have other things in mind, but they are still allowed to vote. They would most likely vote from their previous address using a mail ballot. And that address would be listed at the previous Board of Canvassers. So we don't have data that would instruct upon that, but going back to the beginning, at the Pastori at the Pastori Center, the Pastori complex, as a whole, we do also have Eleanor Slater Hospital. So at Eleanor Slater, there are people confined by their will and not by their will for, under ruling of mental incompetence or for other things that are allowed to vote and that do in fact vote. So we have about 80 to 100, depending on the year, individuals that vote by mail ballot from that precinct.
all right, thank you. I have two quick things. If it could be very quickly, I apologize, taking the microphone away from everyone else that I'm sure wants to speak as well is, if we were to change the charter, it would have to go based on obviously an ordinance. If it passes, it would then go on the ballot for this year, which would then change it for the census 10 years from now. Correct.
That would be my understanding. It'd be subject to, I think, legal interpretation, but for the most part, yes, a charter change for an action that will be taken in the future will only be effective for that action and not retroactive to previous actions.
Thank you. One other question that I do have for our legal counsels that are on here, if this was not to pass, I'm just hypothetical, I'm trying to understand, if this ordinance was not to pass at all today, for whatever reason, or reasons that are being discussed, what would be the repercussions? Are we opening ourselves up to any potential lawsuits if it did not pass? With the understanding, of course, too, that the city Board of Canvassers has to provide the Secretary of State's office election division with the street files for the redistricting process. So I'll defer to.
I'm not sure what the question is, but the charter is clear. I mean, the charter drives the bus on how the data is compiled. I think the director's been clear on that, unless I've missed something.
So if this doesn't pass at all in terms of, again, tonight on the ordinance, the way it is, what happens next? Are we open to any type of lawsuits at all if it doesn't pass? Because
Director,
we're then not obeying, I guess, or following the charter?
So the Voting Rights Act, the Constitution, the federal Constitution, state Constitution, and the charter all require the city to undergo a redistricting operation every 10 years following the release of the decennial census, and that's established by court precedent. So a failure of the city to complete that process and, for example, continue under the 2012 existing ward boundary lines, which, by the way, were drawn using the same rules, could be considered a significant violation of those legal principles and open up the city to litigation. But I think the more pressing matter is for our office, by April 15th, our final data transmission has to be made to the Secretary of State's office. And not only that, assuming if the council were to pass this tonight and would be transmitted to the mayor for his signature, before the ink is dry on the mayor's signature, I'll be on the phone to Regine Printing so that they can begin printing our 60,000 piece mailer that we're going to every registered voter in the city in the month of May. There are supply shortages right now, so the timing on that is critical. We'll be printing hundreds of new maps so that when candidates come in, when voters come in, they can see what their maps, what districts they are in. And we'll also be sending, as the resolution later on the docket indicates, to the General Assembly, a procedural motion to codify the council's action in state law, which was done 10 years ago. So all that will happen the day that this is ratified as law by the city. And then there are a number of other actions that our office has to take over the course of the next succeeding few weeks as we prepare for candidate declaration in June. And once we hit June, that's the election. We're in a nonstop train at that point of 50 or 60 election deadlines that all happen in succession. And not one of those deadlines can be moved or delayed because it would therefore put us in violation of state law and delay other processes, delay the actual conduct of the election in the city of Cranston itself. So that's why it's critically important. It's sort of we're up against an immovable wall in here. And so no matter what, the city has to have a redistricting plan in place here in the next, really now, but ideally the next few days. And that's why tonight, the city of Providence is, I believe, conducting their final public hearing on this, and you have towns all around the state that are scrambling to do what we've been doing here for the last year and get this process complete.
I appreciate your time, and I know a lot of other cities are going through it as well. I mean, my concern is obviously here in Cranston, the fact that we have an incarcerated population, and the, we hear loosely the term occasionally the gerrymandering, right? And, let's be honest, a lot of the folks that are incarcerated are also, Black and brown community members that are also there. And I'm just kind of concerned as far as including that into the population, whether or not, if we did not include any of the incarcerators in the population, would it really dramatically make a dent in the ward redistricting at all?
So not knowing the numbers, because like I said, we have requested the numbers from the state. So if we wanted to, we could go through that theoretical exercise. And even though they said it would be made available to cities and towns as of today, despite numerous requests, the state has still not provided, and I say the state reapportionment commission and its staff have still not provided those numbers to the city. So we can't even really consider that theoretical if we wanted to, because we don't have the data. That said, I could estimate, I can say, well, say there's 1,000 people there. If we follow the exact same rules the state did, that would not significantly change the ward boundaries. There might have to be minor changes here and there, but it wouldn't be a complete redrawing of the entire map of the city, for example, because it wouldn't, 1,000 people in a city of 80,000 wouldn't throw off the target population that much. It's not, for example, this is a bigger issue, I know, in other jurisdictions where you, for example, have a federal penitentiary with 12,000 inmates in a small rural town of 15,000 people. That's a significant issue there, in that wildly would throw off population numbers. Here, it wouldn't throw them off enough where we'd have to completely redraw the map or start from scratch, but it would require us to go through an effort to redraw the map in some way.
Thank you again. And for the record, reason why I'm also asking as far as increasing numbers or decreasing numbers, particularly in Ward 6, is not anything politically on Councilman Riley, or whether it's a Republican or a Democratic held position. It's really just the issue at hand in that ward itself, just increasing that number due to the incarcerated population. It's really one of my my concerns that I have as the research team. But otherwise, as I did last during the ordinance committee, and I commended you and your staff on the work that you've done, and the mapping and the GIS as well being done by the staff. I really appreciate that. My only concern is really on the incarcerated population being counted towards the Ward 6 population.
I understand completely. I also understand what Councilman Donegan said as well. For me, as I mentioned, as an elections administrator, what the law is, I'm going to always going to follow it. And as directed, I'm going to proceed as directed. Just in this case, I know that we are at a point where we can really ill afford any delays, and that any substantive delay in the process now would in fact compromise our ability to conduct the election, that's my paramount concern as an elections administrator, more so than a redistricting coordinator.
Thank you. Director Lima, you testify in front of us a lot. I can hear the urgency in your voice tonight with the deadline that your office and you are up against. Who had their hand up next? Councilmember Donegan, you spoke already, so I'll go to Councilmember Renzulli and then Councilmember Jermaine.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I just would like a clarification. Did you say, Director Lima, that those awaiting trial at the ACI, if they elected to utilize their right to vote, they would vote where their current address was, but they'd be counted at the ACI?
Well, a person who will be at the ACI wouldn't be counted there for voting. So there's two separate things. There's the census population numbers. So if they were there on April 1st, 2020, that's where the census counted them. Yes. If someone has is incarcerated but has not been convicted either for what they're incarcerated for or previously on conviction of a felony, they still technically have the right to vote, and in some cases do vote, but it'd be my understanding the vast majority, if not all, would vote using their previous address, so their current address of residence or of record in the central voter registration system. In other words, someone who's been incarcerated at the ACI isn't generally filing a voter registration form to register to vote at the facility, because usually the focus on other matters at that point in time in their lives. But if they did choose to vote, it would be via mail ballot at their previous address until such time as a felony conviction would take place, and then they're not eligible to vote at all.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question and everyone's questions. You're extremely knowledgeable, and I know that the whole city appreciates it. I would like to, I guess, ask legal, are we essentially going against, we take an oath to uphold the charter, and if in the charter it says we need to go by the census numbers, regardless of how we feel, you know, where people should be counted, is it, we're essentially going against our oath if we vote against this tonight, correct?
I don't have an opinion on oaths, but I do have an opinion on what the charter calls for in terms of the utilization of the census data. And I think, and I've made that position clear, and I think Director Lima has as well. I don't know if Mr. Verdecchia has anything to add to that.
Okay, thank you.
And not to confuse things more, and Director Lima, you can clarify, just like if a college student was at Johnson and Wales on April 1st, they get counted there, but they could live in Saratoga, New York, and do an absentee ballot. Rob, is that the kind of the same premise to what Councilwoman Renzulli was asking?
Right. So the census counts, for example, students at Brown University or University of Rhode Island or Rhode Island School of Design, PC, or in Cranston's case, Johnson Wales University. If they're resident, if they're domiciled in the city on that date, April 1st, 2020, that's where the Census Bureau counts them. That's where our population numbers show them. You know, that's actually, there was a correction made there in the census numbers in 2020 versus 2010. In 2010, the census erroneously counted all the students there in Providence, which throws off the numbers in Ward 1 a little bit. And I think one of the reasons actually why we see a bigger population increase in Ward 1 than the rest of the city is because we informed the census of that error a couple of years ago. They were able to update their data. We created a new address. It was 100 Harborside Boulevard, Providence, Rhode Island, even though 5 of the 12 dorms there are physically in Cranston. They were all sharing the same address. So we established through the Public Works Department and through working with Johnson Wales, a new address there, 55 Wildcat Way, Cranston, Rhode Island, so that the students who are domiciled at those residence halls, the 5 on the Cranston side, would be counted correctly by the Census Bureau. And in looking at the data, it appears that that was the case. And that's the case for, you know, people in a hospital or a nursing home or other areas where you may be considered temporarily absent from another domicile. But as far as the Census Bureau is concerned, that is where you're domiciled on the census day. In order to prevent you from being counted multiple times, they count you where you are. The Census Bureau calls it counting people once, only once, and in the right place.
Thank you, Director and Councilwoman. Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Director Lima. My question is, you know, I spoke already when you present, and I commend you for the lie. I have no issue with the lie, but my issue is it clear the state took an action to remove whether completely or not completely? So I want to make sure if we do whatever we do here, when like the resolution, we're not there yet. So if we pass this ordinance and we pass this resolution and we send it to the state, so if they say, no, we're not following what we propose, what would happen?
So in this case, the state wouldn't be empowered to do so because under the Home Rule Charter provisions, the state does not have the ability to dictate to the city how we draw our ward lines. However, the city has decided over decades to include language in the charter requiring our ward lines to be approved by the state. So the state views that, to my understanding, as a procedural measure. So it's not something that they can go to the General Assembly and the General Assembly would debate it and decide to change it and alter it. Whatever the city sends to the state the state says, oh, thanks for sending it to us. We'll get this passed. We'll encode it as a local act and resolve. So from a city perspective, I'll give an example. 10 years ago, my predecessor, when she was the redistricting coordinator, drafted similar legislation to go to the state that actually included all the ward boundaries, the meets and bounds descriptions of how each ward would be defined. The state legislative council, the General Assembly in 2012, threw that out and rewrote the draft resolution in essentially the form that you have here, which is just a paragraph that says, to the extent that this needs to be approved by the state, it is hereby approved by the state. So the state's action, or the state General Assembly's action to ratify the council's and the city's action is purely procedural act. And I think it's, if you want me to postulate on a reason why it's there, it might be just be to ensure it's encoded somewhere in state law that the city council took this action on this date.
So we, as a city, we have the power to change this without having the state weight on it. Is that right?
The power to change how we count the
Like
population?
if you want to remove the incarcerated population, if you want to do that as a city, we have the power to do that without having the state weight on it.
The city would have the power to do that as a whole by changing the charter, but the charter can only be changed, by affirmative action of a majority of voters voting in an election to do so. And even then, to do so, we would then have to rely upon cooperation from the state, from a state agency that is not subject to oversight by the city, to provide that data, which is confidential data and information to us in order to make those decisions. And then I think then there would be another legal question if we were to remove just the city of Cranston were to take that action and remove persons from the ACI, they would be nowhere. They would have no representation. So that those persons could then perhaps have justification to enter the litigation with the city. And there's a lot of legal questions there that I'm not really qualified to answer, but those are hypotheticals. And in order for all that to happen, yes, there would have to be a charter change first. And those other questions would have to be answered along the way.
My last question. So you can assure me whatever decision we made this evening, there is no potential lawsuit or where the city will waste money or whatever in that particular issue?
I can tell you that nationally, redistricting is one of the most litigated functions of government at all levels of government. And so I'm not an attorney. I can't look at this. And I don't think that'd be the case for any ordinance or any act passed by the council that an assurance could be made that it's litigation proof.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Donegan. I'll come back to you, Councilmember Marino.
Thank you,
Hand is
Council
up.
President. Thank you, Director Lima, for all the work that your office has put into this. While I appreciate and understand Councilman Donegan's argument and concerns, and I have those as well, because I do not think that when we're talking about redistricting populations for the wards, that we should be considering a population that is not really eligible to vote here in Cranston. So therefore, I don't see how that leads to fair and equal representation. So I agree with that. The problem that I have is the legal ability to not vote, not to approve this ordinance, because the state took the football only so far and they didn't make the touchdown. The state commission did something they haven't done in a long time, and at least set forth that the end result should be that the ACI incarcerated population should not be considered when doing the redistricting, but the state has not enacted a law to enable us to do that tonight. And our charter limits us to following the census data, which includes that population. Director Lima took it one step further in terms of the Census Bureau, while they've been considering the action, hasn't done it yet either. So the three mechanisms legally in which we have to, to execute on that admirable, fair and equal representation, I just don't see us having that ability tonight. And that's why I think that I am going to have to vote yes for this ordinance, despite feeling those same concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marino. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet? Nice. Councilman Riley.
I'll put in my 2 cents. So first and foremost, to Director Lima, I thanked you at the ordinance committee, and I want to thank you and your staff and the board tonight. You guys were on top of this. The foresight you had a year ago, putting everything together, you blew other cities and towns away, and the state as a whole. You guys should be commended, and everyone should know how well you guys did and how hard you all worked. So I want to thank you. With regard to the issue of the quote unquote prison gerrymandering, the setting this forth just on prisoners when the actual group should be populations not eligible to vote where they are, that would include all your college students in Ward 1. That would include all your children, every children in every single ward. So there's a lot of transient groups that go through the city that are included. So why this one and not that one? With respect to however the charter deals with it legally, I concur with Councilwoman Marino. The charter's clear. So as of tonight, I don't see that we even have a choice. But at the same time, I like to try to cut through things and not dispel with just noise and focus on actual specifics. And I've asked this question before. I don't know, and we can just use this vote before us tonight, how anyone in Ward 6 has a greater voice on whether we pass this redistricting plan than someone in Ward 5 or 4, based on simply this theory of one person, one vote. Because like we already established the fact that there are 5 dorms full of people in Ward 1 that are counted but not eligible to vote, and there are a number of children, and children differ in each of the wards that are counted and that don't vote. So I think there's no actual specific difference to anyone throughout this city when there are 9 of us here that vote. I understand the number and the amorphous theory behind it, but when we actually get to concrete people, how does John Smith at 23 Delwood Road benefit over someone else at Thunder Trail? So that's all I had to say on that. I think we should be focusing on the incredible work that Director Lima and his staff did. And if we really want to talk about gerrymandering and we want to actually do that, there's a wonderful example laying on the table behind us of our city map compared to the state map. So I think maybe the focus of gerrymandering should be in that arena rather than just speaking about theories. But so I will be voting for this tonight, and thank you again for all the hard work you and your team did.
Thank you. Any other discussion from any council members that haven't spoken? If not, I'll give Councilmember Donegan the last word if his hand's still up. Councilmember Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. I appreciate the comments of everyone tonight, and I recognize that this is a policy disagreement, and that's the nature of being in politics, or policy disagreements, and that's quite all right. I'm not going to go back and forth with Councilman Riley. We've done it, I think, 3 or 4 times on this issue, so I'm just not going to go back into it point by point tonight. I just want to be clear, though, that my vote against the maps and the resolution is not in any way a reflection of my feeling of the work of the canvassers department or Director Lima. I've told him that personally. Want to let the canvassers know that you have all done an incredible job, transparent, communicative throughout the entire process. It has nothing. I don't want anyone to think that I'm making any sort of accusations of nefarious conduct or anything like that. I just want to be real clear about that. I think you all have done a great job. It's merely a policy decision that policymakers, that's us, have chosen to make or not make, and that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Donegan. I promised to give you the last word. You're the last council member. The last word, I do see Chairman Jack Voney in the audience, and he hasn't had an opportunity to speak it. Do you want anything to add, Chairman, before I call for a roll?
I'll be extremely brief. Randall Jack Voney, 2219 Phoenix Avenue. I am the chairman of the redistricting committee, or the now dissolved redistricting committee. I would just point out, I think that the point that I just want to stress that, but if you don't vote for this, essentially, because the state's guidance was vague, what essentially what you're doing is, if we removed those people, even though we don't have the ability to do that because the charter does not allow us, this board does not allow us to do that. So it wasn't even an option we had, but let's just say theoretically we removed those people. If it was those 1,000 people and then another city or town like Providence, Westerly, wherever chose not to count them in their vote, they're counted nowhere. So by voting against this tonight, in a sense, you're putting us into a situation that if we had done something different, you would count people nowhere. And I think that's worse, actually. I'd rather at least have them counted somewhere than counted nowhere. So that's all I would add. But I appreciate everybody's kind words about the process. It really, between Maria and Nick did a fantastic job and made our jobs easier. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really lucky to have all of your hard work. And Maria, I'm never giving you a citation for retirement. You have to stay because you're the best GIS operator in the state. So the G means great. So keep up the great work. And thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please take the roll on 322-01S.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
No.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
No,
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
sorry, Councilman Donegan,
No.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Sorry, I was out of order.
And I'm yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes. Motion passes. 4-3. Okay, moving on to resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact City of Cranston's 22 ward redistricting plan. This passed in committee. Urge passes. We pretty much just discussed it. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilwoman Marino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
No.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
no,
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, Chairman Riley. That concludes the business of the ordinance committee. Moving on to public comment for undocketed items. I know there are a couple people here to speak tonight. Please come up one at a time. Name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to 4 minutes. I will be timing. And yeah, name and address for the record and 4 minutes. Doesn't matter who goes first. So take your time. Thank you. And make sure the green light is on the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Rita Lavoy, 47 Marion Ave South. I live in the house directly next to 51 Marion Ave South, which had a very large fire over the weekend. My house sustained substantial damage from the fire, both from what appears to be accidental firefighters directing the hose through our window, flooding our first floor, but also damage from the fire itself. All of our siding, all of our roofing needs to be replaced. My whole family is going to have to move out. The contractor expects at least 6 months up to a year while all of our things are put in storage and our house is repaired. I'm here tonight to tell you this because I have tried now 5 times to request a meeting with the mayor and I have gotten no response. I'm extremely disappointed by this, of course, and I'm here hoping that by letting you all know about this, I can perhaps get somewhere. The reason I'm requesting a meeting with the mayor is because the house next to me that burned down has been vacant and abandoned for over 30 years. I know for a fact that I have called zoning and dozens of my neighbors have called zoning and building violations in this house. I know that. We've been there for 10 years. We're very friendly with our neighbors. We're friendly with the owner. He doesn't live there. He hasn't lived there in decades. He uses it or used it for storage. There's very little remaining right now. In the firefighting process, there's also substantial debris that went down the sidewalk and is going all the way down the street into the storm drain. So there are really two things that I've been asking for from the city. And again, I have received 0 phone calls returned. I've called the mayor's office. I've called the deputy chief of staff. I've called the building inspector. I can't even, I've called the assistants to these people. I'm not sure if they're afraid of a lawsuit. Maybe that's why they're not returning a call. That's totally hypothetical because I have no understanding of why I can't get a meeting. That's really all I have to say. I'm just asking for a little bit of support. And I think as a constituent, I deserve a phone call. Thank you.
First of all, our heartfelt sympathies are with you and your family. And thank you for coming here to tell us about this. I will direct you to Director Moretti, the mayor's chief of staff. He's here, so he can talk to you now. Director. I think we normally don't do a back and forth during public comment. I think if you want to meet with her right out in the hallway or something, that would be great.
Just in fairness, just the mayor was at your house speaking with your husband. I know that. So I'm not quite sure about a meeting because he took the meeting to your house. That being aside, sure, we can arrange you to put a claim in with the city of Cranston in the finance department. The lady's name is Gianna. Whether you want to go through, we could go through your insurance company or directly. So Director Strom, you can visit his department if you like, and that would satisfy that claim. And it was very unfortunate, that fire, but thank goodness no one was injured. We have, the place will be demolished next door. There's legal proceedings that had to take place, and fences, as you probably realize, has been put around the perimeter to secure it, and the old debris has been swept up.
So if I might just add a few things, if that's all right, Mr.
We-
President.
So we can't do a back and forth. And Director Moretti, I know you wanted to get back. I'd really like you, if you two can talk about this.
We'll have Deputy Macaulay give you a call, or your husband, whoever you prefer, because I know that was.
But I'll absolutely give you the last word to finish your statement.
I mean, I'm very happy to meet with you all. I think that's a great first step. I just really do want to emphasize the fact that the level of customer service that is happening is so abysmally low that I can't believe that I haven't gotten return phone calls. And I'm somebody who understands this system. I've worked in municipal government. And I just kind of, my heart goes out for people who don't know how to navigate this system. And it's very disappointing to see this level of service. And
We'll
just
be
really
happy
terrible
to
customer
speak with
service.
you again. Perhaps the mayor thought that meeting took place outside your residence. Apparently, I don't know if your husband mentioned that to you, but we can certainly be happy to help
I'm
you
aware that
again.
the mayor was there and I'm aware of what he said. And
Very good.
these messages have happened after the mayor shook hands and left.
Okay,
And I hadn't returned it.
all
gotten a
right,
return phone
very
call.
good. We'll have Mr. Macaulay give you a phone call.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you-
your time.
thank you very
I really
much.
appreciate it. And I know that you guys have been doing such an amazing night tonight with so much joy and all the children. And I'm sorry to have to be here to have some really bad news, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening, name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening. My name is Sheila Ressiger. I live at 50 Malvern Avenue in Cranston. And before I start my remarks, I would like to read from the Rhode Island General Laws 3614-1 pertaining to Code of Ethics. It is the policy of the state of Rhode Island that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust and the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety, and not use their position for private gain or advantage. My colleague Claire Stottmuller, who is also a Cranston resident, and I have spent the past several years participating in webinars, reading research articles, and connecting with people across the country, medical, scientific experts, and people who have been harmed by wireless radiation. This is the radiation emitted from so-called small cell antennas for 5G on utility light poles in front of people's homes, and also from smart meters that measure electric, gas, and water usage. We are not opposed to technology, far from it. We object to wireless radiation, which causes harm to humans, flora, fauna, and the environment. We support wired connections, fiber to the premises for internet access. Fiber to the premises is not only safe, but also fast, reliable, secure, uses much less energy than wireless, and is future-proof. Over these past few years, we have sent numerous emails to members of the Cranston City Council and other Cranston officials, explaining what we have found in order to make you aware of what is at stake in order to protect Cranstonians. We have received minimal response. Our group, 5G Free Rhode Island, was permitted to provide an hour-long presentation to the August 24th, 2020 Cranston City Council meeting. Unfortunately, there was no follow-up. After the election that fall, the makeup of the Cranston City Council changed. Claire and I have continued to update the council on significant developments, such as a landmark lawsuit against the FCC, but there has still been no response. Therefore, we decided to print out all of the emails that we have sent, along with the comments we made at public meetings. We have compiled them into this loose leaf binder, and I'm requesting that it be made part of the official record and kept in the city clerk's office for reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, name and address for the record, please.
Steve Fry's 107 Garden Hills Drive. I'm not sure if it's proper to talk about this, but I just wanted to say is like, I want to thank the council for approving what the work of the redistricting commission did just now. All you who voted for it should be commended. I was very glad to see the ordinance committee voted for unanimously. And the last thing I wanted to say, I'm not to repeat myself from the ordinance committee. I want to particularly commend those who voted for this ordinance, who did so not because they agree with everything in it, but because they follow the law. I'm on the planning board, and sometimes I have to make decisions, as I was on when I was on the Public Utilities Commission as general counsel. Sometimes you got to make decisions, not because you like it, but because you're following the law. Because the alternative is to engage in political expediency and just create chaos. So I want to thank the member, Councilwoman Marino, who did so. I know it's not easy to vote in a way you don't particularly agree with, but you always do the right thing when you follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
I should have used my opera voice, excuse me. I am an opera singer. And so I told you I don't like reading about microwave radiation. But in addition to this gift that Sheila and I have compiled, so you can avail yourselves of the information we've kept abreast the last 2 years, I have good news that I'm going to share with you. It is really good news in the arena of microwave radiation. Verizon, AT&T, and others started offering new C-band wireless at frequencies in January 2022 with upgrades to existing wireless telecommunications facilities, WTFs, expected to continue over the next few years. So the big lie has been fully exposed, the lie that alleged that 4G, 5G, so-called small wireless telecommunications facilities needed to be installed on utility poles in front of your bedroom or my bedroom. That can now be ignored because now they're using C-band as their waves for 5G. So the whole idea that it had to be installed on the very dangerous antenna outside someone's bedroom, that is no longer, poof, gone. T-Mobile, in addition to its much hyped 600 megahertz service, has expanded its 5G mid-band service at frequencies around 2,500 microhertz spectrum, blah, blah. None of the infrastructure antennas for these frequencies need to be installed on utility poles in front of homes. All three cellular carriers are attempting to still expand their millimeter wave antenna infrastructure, but cities will make a metaphor since we had basketball tonight. Cities that know how to skate to where the puck will be are shutting down such hazardous WTF applications to deliver actual public safety to their residents. In closing, I can provide this in the booklet, but I'll just add one more thing here. All three US carriers have repurposed 3G, 4G frequencies for their low band and mid band so-called 5G nationwide service, which is anything but. All speed tests to date of broadly available service show that actual 4G speeds exceed actual 5G speeds. And of course, you know that Sheila and I have been presenting a number of times about how fiber to the premises is the way to go. But meanwhile, the whole idea that we needed these antennas for 5G on utility poles, poof, it has been replaced with the technology that they can use the big towers instead for their 5G. Nice update. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Name and address for the record, please.
Vin McChrystal, 65 Sage Drive. Hello, everyone. You may remember me from back in November when the council voted 7-2 to defeat a proposal by a developer named Casal to have at Sage Drive the zoning change from A80 to A20, which was 2 acres to a ½ acre. I've been talking to Councilman Campiano. When I was here that night, I said to you, let's vote this zoning change down tonight, and then let's take it out of the comprehensive plan. I have testified on this property and other properties in Alpine Estates over a dozen times through the years. We've been battling this for over a decade. And you know, the mistakes that were made back in 2010 in the comprehensive plan, which we all know is expired, I think we should remove these properties from that comprehensive plan. I did contact Jason Pizzullo. I asked him, how do I get this done? And he said to me that the comprehensive plan amendment, it would be done through an amendment, and many cities and towns do amendments. We would have to work through the city council to submit an ordinance that would amend the comprehensive plan. And that's what I'm here tonight to ask to have done. I'd like to have the city council come up with an ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan to take the Sage Drive property and 2 other properties, which we've had to testify on over the years, out of the comprehensive plan from 2010.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the gallery that hasn't spoken yet? Okay.
Good evening, once again, Council President, members of the council. I just want to let the members of the council know, and essentially anybody else present, we do have a number of maps available that we only are keeping 1 or so of each for the record. The rest will be discarded or recycled. So if anyone would like a copy of those maps, I can make them available to you here tonight. Otherwise, our office will be charging $5 per map for any resident or candidate that would like one in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Director. I see no further public comment in chambers. Tom, do we have anybody online? If you're online and would like to give public comment, please raise your hand.
I see no public comment.
Okay, thank you. I will close public comment for undocketed items. Moving on to elections and or appointments of city officials. We have the appointment of Julie Messiner for a term to expire January 2nd, 2023, sponsored by Council Member Donegan. This is an appointment to the Small Business Advisory Committee. This is informational only. No vote will be taken. report of city officers. I see none. Moving on to executive communications, we have the legal fees report from July to March. Are there any questions from council members to the administration on the legal fees report? I see none. Moving on to council president communications. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Easter and Passover coming up. Before that, as a full council, certainly we have a busy month coming up with the budget schedule and such, and probably be here every other night for the next 6 weeks, starting very shortly. The mayor's budget address is on Friday, April 1st, so please mark that on your calendar. Certainly like to also send our thoughts and prayers to those in Ukraine. I was hoping since last month things would change and get better, but it seems like it hasn't. It's gotten worse. So certainly on behalf of the entire council, extend our thoughts and prayers to the country of Ukraine. That being said, it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to briefly ask Director Moretti, if you don't have any information, that's fine. Any news on the Knightsville project or redevelopment or the park? If not, I'll just punt that to the next Public Works Committee agenda. Just looking to pick your brain for a second.
Yeah, sure thing. The mayor's next project, if you will, is the Knightsville project after Rolfe Square. Patuxent Village is wrapping up with some lighting. In fact, should be installed very soon. That should wrap that up, I think, very soon. Now we have to get Warwick to take care of that. We'll get after Pocosi. As to Knightsville, as you know, the mayor had a concept, actually, council president had a nice concept about the Cola Pocket Park. And last year, the mayor wants to look into the feasibility and to see if that program would come into existence. And that basically being expand where the gazebo area is over that mound and the entire land in the back there where people use it for parking. Part of the St. Mary's Feast uses that to expand that whole thing to make a park out of it. Well, that concept got expanded into thinking of an entire district revitalization, particularly with the number of businesses there, number of restaurants there. And I think the mayor envisions Knightsville as being the next best thing or the best thing since Federal Hill. As you know, there's so many restaurants in that area, so many small businesses. So he asked Director Mason to come up with some concepts. And as you might remember, when at the event at the gazebo last October, when Speaker Shikachi presented the check for $10,000, that we invited the council along with the public we had initial plans laid out to see what that redistricting would look like, renovation would look like. And that concept was introduced, input was received. Director Mason went back and incorporated that input along with the businesses along Cranston Street, where Director Paulino solicited input. And so they're finalizing some engineering plans for the area, in which it really entails an RFP will be going out for streetscaping. That being from, I'll say from Randall Street right through, I'll say the center, the spoke there of Knightsville with Cranston Street, Phoenix Avenue, and Park Avenue meet, extending a little bit further to Vervina Street, Green Avenue, and down to a little past the Marquette's area on Park Avenue. And that streetscaping really entails new trees that are basically diseased. Just about every tree is diseased. It was determined by the arborist. New lantern lighting and stamped concrete sidewalks. So hopefully that's going to give it a nice new look. And as part of the, I don't know if the exact terminology, but a supplemental bid will be going in for the pocket park, depending on funding, to make that, to basically, as we mentioned, expand it, put a bocce court in there. There's a pergola, more of an inviting area to have concerts, that type of thing. So that's on the docket, if you will. And we'll see what the bids come in at. And if everything works out, we'd be looking at mid-July after the feast to break ground with everything in order. And we'll be sharing that, we'll be a financing proposal to the council very soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Just wanted to bring that back to the forefront. We haven't talked about it in a while and certainly look forward. If you have any more updates, let us know. We'll bring it out at the Public Works Committee. Thank you, Director. Moving on to council member communications. Ma'am, you can't come back here. Can you? Okay, moving on to council member communications. We have communications here from Council Vice President Ferry. I'd ask that this remain on the docket till next month when Council Vice President is here. Just want to say that all of our thoughts and prayers are with Council Vice President. And we'll continue to keep him in our thoughts and prayers. And we'll see him shortly and wish him and his family the best. Moving on to the next agenda item, Councilwoman Marino. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. The item this evening is status of the city's acknowledgement and approval signature of the baseline documentation report for the night conservation land as overseen by the West Bay Land Trust. A couple of members of the West Bay Land Trust reached out to me stating that they were seeking the approval signature on the baseline documentation report, which was required for them to file with, I believe, DEM. And I put on this evening. I also spoke with Director Moretti just as recent as today about this. So if you'd like to speak on it and maybe just give a timetable as to when this might occur. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for calling this to our attention. To my knowledge, that we very much appreciate you sending along that document. It's 134 pages. This is the first page of it. So I sent this along to Planning Director Pizzullo, and he'll be looking into it. I think he'll do it pretty expeditiously within a week or two, more than likely. He gave it a quick blush, just to give it a little update, and he thought it looked pretty comprehensive, and it was a good job. We did notice it was dated 2016. Just got to, obviously just to give a sanity check to that, but he thought the document appeared in good order, good appearance. He does have some questions in terms of who, the sign-offs, who is it really, going to, what's it used for, that type of thing. But at first blush, it looks like it's in nice shape, and he thinks possibly even by the end of this week. But let's say by the end of next week, he'll give his recommendation, and with that, the mayor can sign off.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
And Councilmember Marino, that West Bay Land Trust, they need any service projects. I got a lot of Boy Scouts in the troop that need service hours. Pass it along.
I will probably, because I hear that trail, and even Director Mason has remarked, is quite a dumping ground from time to time. So
Yeah, they'll
yes, yep.
be happy to get some people out there to help.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving on under council member communications. Anybody have anything to add before I close out this section? Councilmember Vargas.
So many of you know, there's been that survey that's been actually here with a lot of us within our with our constituencies and community stakeholders. I have to say that the survey is going very well so far. It was supposed to close, I think, on Friday, the 25th. However, it has been extended till, I invite you to interrupt me at any time, Councilwoman Enzoli, I believe, is it Friday?
The 31st. So it'd be through the end of the month.
Through the end of the month. And so just for those that end up watching the recordings on YouTube, we hope that you can actually take that survey. And for anyone who hasn't shared that, we hope that you can share it on your end as well with your network, with your constituency as well, in hopes that we get more survey response and then eventually have all those responses shared with all of us. So I have to say that the Latino Policy Institute actually had reached out in hopes as to how the survey was going. And I asked them to please share it if at all possible. So that's all.
That's great. And just to add, the survey can be found on the homepage of the city website and pretty much on all our social media pages too.
So thank you to the administration. I think Steve also put it on the website. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? I see none. I will close council member communications. Moving on to council business matters carried over. I see none. Introduction of new business. I'll entertain a motion to forward all of the new business to the appropriate committee.
So moved.
Any discussion on the new business? I see none. Madam Clerk, you please take the roll.
Councilman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes, City Council's next regular monthly meeting will be held on April 25th, 2022. Thank you very much, everyone. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I see none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.